To stand out, you have to be different. Let's dive into what to do if you feel like you're drowning in a sea of competition, other companies are constantly undercutting your prices, and it seems like your customers are always price shopping you. There are 3 proven strategies that I've learned along my 13-year journey as an event professional that took me from being a broke event professional making less than $25,000 a year for unfortunately a long time, to an event professional that owns a multi-million-dollar company. These strategies have changed my life. So if you are tired of beating your head against the wall over and over and over again and feeling frustrated because you have way too much competition out there and you're not sure what to do about it, this is for you. And even if you're not an event professional, I promise this will apply to your industry and your business as well. Welcome to the Event Secrets Podcast, where we talk about how to put on better events, take better care of our clients, and make a whole lot more money in the process. This is an all-action, no-fluff podcast full of actionable insights that you can follow, created specifically for event professionals. Standing out means everything in the event space. I am the CEO of a company called Balloon Artisan. We make absolutely stunning balloon arches for corporate events, grand openings, big conventions, and some private events like birthdays and baby showers and graduations, things like that. We work with clients that can't afford for their event to be forgettable. They want to make sure that everything goes off without a hitch and that it turns out absolutely perfect. Today, the balloon decorating space is incredibly competitive, but it wasn't always that way. So I started the company 13 years ago. And back when I started, I really don't remember any companies that were doing balloon arches. And that was kind of before like Google and the web and all that were really robust. And so it was hard to find people if they were out there doing it. And I remember in 2019, things are going along pretty good. There were 5 main balloon decor companies in Utah, which is where we got started. Today we're in dozens and dozens of states throughout the country. But back then it was a single location just in Utah as I was figuring stuff out. So we were in one location, there were 5 companies, mine was the biggest, and then all of a sudden COVID happened, 2020. Well, my hypothesis was that the entire space would get wiped out, as all of these balloon companies, most of which weren't profitable, a lot of people were having to take on day jobs just to stay afloat. I figured that would wipe everybody out. Well, to my surprise, in 2021, competition started popping up everywhere. Because in 2019, there were 5 balloon decor companies, mine was the largest in Utah, and then by 2021, there were over 70, and those are just the ones that I counted and that I came across. And so I had a big problem because most of these 70 balloon companies that just popped up overnight had no clue what they were doing. As a matter of fact, most of them were just trying to pick up a side hustle. They're trying to do a couple events per month, trying to make a couple $100 per month, couple thousand maybe, and they didn't know how to price. They didn't understand margins. They didn't understand marketing. There was so much that they didn't understand that they went in and they just completely dropped the pricing in the market. And so one time I had a corporate client that had worked with me for years before the pandemic, and they said, "Hey Keenan, we want to do this, this really cool balloon installation, decorating our staircase in our office building. When people come in, we think it'll be really awesome. What would you do to, do it, and what would that cost?" And so I go and I put together this elaborate design for them. I'm like, "Okay, I think we're around $3,500 for this." They come back and say, "Cool, we're checking with a few other companies," and I was like, "Oh no," and we'll let you know what we decide. So a week later, they get back in touch with me. Actually, I was following up with them, but I get back in touch with them and they say, "Hey, we're going with another company that said they could do it the same thing as you for $750. So I bid $3,500. This company bid $750. And by the time you factor in all the materials and labor and box truck rental and shipping and all that stuff, the person was probably making like $15 an hour, which is not really even a great wage anyways, but it's really not a great wage if you're only working a couple hours per week. But once again, that is kind of what our market consisted of back in 2021. And it was brutal. And I knew I had to find a way to stand out. This is how I learned these lessons that I'm going to talk to you about right now. Because I can't live off $15 an hour. That was my full-time gig. And I had a family to support, I had a kid. Like there's no way I could possibly get by doing what I needed to do on that amount. And it was really frustrating. And just one last note to kind of add some street cred. Back during that time, I was doing about $180,000 per year. It was mostly me and some helpers. I was pocketing about $100,000 to $120,000 depending on the year, personally as the owner of the business. So that's kind of where I'm at. And last year, Balloon Artisan did $1.6 million. So that was like more than an 8x jump. So I think it's safe to say that I did figure out how to stand out in a crowded sea of competition. All right, let's dive into the good stuff. So let's talk about 3 ways to stand out. The first way is picking your client. The second way is carving out your niche. And then the third way is finding your positioning in the market and doubling down on that positioning. So we're going to dive into the specifics of each of these 3 points, but I do want to point out this might seem really intuitive at first, but I promise you that almost no event professionals do this, and very few entrepreneurs in any business do this. And that's why there's so much competition. They're constantly fighting for the company down the road, and they're getting price shot by customers, things like that. It's because they don't understand these principles. So as you learn these principles and as you understand them, I promise you that a lot of the problems that come from being in an oversaturated market will just evaporate. Let's dive into the first one, and that is picking your client. Now, you cannot be all things to all people. It's just not possible. There's the old expression, the jack of all trades, master of none. Well, this is just a polite way of saying not really good at anything, like not world class at anything, but they dabble in a lot of stuff. And you do not want to build a business based on this premise. Trust me, it's really difficult to grow a team and to train other team members. It's difficult to command a higher price premium. You want to find something that you can go all in on and laser focus on that client and what their needs are. And I promise you that your job as an event professional and as a business owner will be so much easier when you do that. Just think about it. What if, you needed heart surgery, let's say, heaven forbid, knock on wood, right? And you go to the heart surgeon, the heart surgeon's like, oh, hang on, I'm actually starting my mechanic shift in an hour, so we might have to meet another day. And then you're like, okay, what about, Tuesday? And he's like, well, I have to actually go into the bakery and work for, that day. And then after that, I'm going back to the tattoo studio to do that. And then I have my shift over the weekend at the landscaping company. You're gonna be like, well, dude, no, I don't want you operating on my heart, right? Because you're not going to trust that that person knows what they're doing, that they're really good. And so one thing that I see a lot from event professionals, and I know hundreds and hundreds of them, is that they try to do a little bit of everything. So they're like, yeah, I can do your AV, I can do your event planning, I can do your catering, yeah, I can provide graphic design for you, sure, why not, right? You don't want to be a jack of all trades. You want to zoom in on one thing, become laser focused, and dominate everybody at that one thing. And in doing this, you're going to find that your life and your business and your career as an event professional gets so much easier. Everything gets simplified because you have one customer to focus on, one need, one use case, whatever, one product, one service, whatever it is that you do, and you get really, really good at understanding that customer. This will trickle into your marketing messaging, into your website, into your sales scripts, and into your customer service and how you onboard clients. This literally trickles down into everything. Whereas if you're diluted and you're focusing on a bunch of different customer segments, everything gets really messy. And trust me, I did this for a long time. I tried to be all things to all people, and it just held me back. So there's a lot of different types of customers out there that you can service as an event professional. You can go after private clients, you can go after weddings, you can go after big corporate clients, you can do specifically like graduations or specifically birthdays or quinceañeras or whatever. You can do massive conventions, you can do grand openings, and you can make a great business serving any or all of those. Well, not all those at the same time, but you can go after any of those customer types and do really, really well. But it's important to realize that each customer type is going to have pros and they're also going to have cons. I like to think of this process kind of like you're picking someone to marry or picking someone to date, right? The person that you're attracted to hopefully has a long list of good things that you love about them, but there's probably also some things that you're like, oh, it kind of drives me crazy, or like maybe pink flags or red flags even, like, I don't know about this, right? Each type of these customers are the same. And so you have to really think about who do you want to work with? Who can you pour your energy and your passion into helping? For example, wedding clients, obviously a massive industry, but one of the biggest problems about wedding clients is they're usually not repeat clients, right? Hopefully, unless they're getting divorced over and over. But usually it's a one and done thing. So you work really hard to establish a relationship and to set expectations and all that stuff. You go through hell and back to get the wedding perfect. And then at the end of the day, that's it. Now you have to go find your next client, right? Hopefully they send you a referral, but if they don't, you're back to square one. And this can be very difficult to deal with. Now the flip side is, because it's a once in a lifetime moment, your opportunity to make an impact is going to be massive. And also they probably have a pretty good budget saved up for it, right? So you might be able to make a little bit more if you're catering to a wedding clientele, as opposed to if you're doing, something with corporate where they're doing 5 or 6 events per year and you're involved in all of those. Corporate clients are great. At Balloon Artisan, about 70% of our clients are corporate clients, and we do really well at servicing them. We understand their needs, we understand the paperwork, the accounting hoops that we have to jump through, all the vendor nonsense. We understand that they want to partner with someone who's professional, that will show up on time, that will be very communicative. And so we've designed all of our processes to tailor to their needs. But the downside is it's pretty rare that you do something for a corporate event and the person's like reduced to tears because it's so moving and so beautiful and such a monumental occasion. Usually like, dude, this is awesome, great, off to the next thing, right? Because it's their job. That can be kind of a downer when you're used to the high emotions and high impact of working with private clientele, right? But the flip side is they're a lot more level-headed and they're not on the emotional roller coaster like a lot of private clientele can be when you're working with their events. And so you really just need to think about, okay, where do I want to position myself? What customer do I want to go all in on? Because you need to ignore everybody else. I mean, I promise you, I did not do this for a long time and it really held me back. At Balloon Artisan, we do an amazing job taking care of corporate clients. Now, we take care of all of our clients and put a ton of effort into all of them, but we understand the corporate client persona much better than every other persona. And our entire brand is oriented to taking care of those clients. So we understand the importance of a professional brand image, of prompt and responsive communication. We understand that they need a brand that will show up on time every time. And we understand that they don't want to worry about, if their balloon artist's kid is sick that day and so the artist has to cancel or they can't find a babysitter or whatever. They want somebody that does corporate events and that is where they dominate, right? And so we do a good job with that. Whereas somebody that spends 80 to 90% of their time focusing on birthdays and baby showers probably isn't going to know how to do that, and it's going to be difficult for them to compete with us in terms of speed and service and understanding the client's needs. Now, for us, we like corporate clients as well because they have multiple events in a year. Where a private client, we might absolutely crush their event, say like a 40th birthday party, and they can be like, oh my gosh, you guys are amazing. We're totally working with you again. Here's a 5-star review. Here's a video testimonial, whatever it is. But when the 41st birthday comes around, they might not be ready for a big celebration. But with corporate, we find that it's a lot more consistent, which has allowed us to build our business and have consistent work for our artists and for our team. The whole system gets better by focusing on those corporate clients. Now, if I were to focus on birthday clients or baby shower clients, I would have a completely different approach. So what you could say is, I like being a big fish in a small pond. For a lot of years as an entrepreneur, I tried being the small fish in the big pond, and I just got my ass kicked. And everyone was out, with venture capital funding and lots of money and lots of employees and talent and all that stuff, and I was just getting squashed. I'm like, you know what? I'd rather find my niche and dominate that niche and really grow within that niche rather than going after these massive things and being very broad and general in my business solutions and compete with everybody. Speaking of competition, one important thing to understand is that you always have competition. Every single event professional has competition. Even if you're doing the most obscure thing that nobody else on the earth knows how to do, at the very least, you're competing with the client's budget. They can always save money by just not working with you. And so you always have competition. Now, at Balloon Artisan, we have a ton of competition. We're competing with other balloon companies, but we're also competing with lighting companies, caterers, and florists, and people that rent out furniture. We have so many competitors. And so my goal is, once again, to know where I stand the strongest and where Balloon Artisan really excels. And then I also want to be aware of where my competitors are weak. And so I am going to position ourselves where we are strong. I'm going to be like, hey, look, like these guys don't know what they're doing, right? So if we're competing against another balloon company, it's like, hey, ask them how many corporate events they've done this year. And probably not very many. Like, I looked at their Instagram, looks like they do a lot of birthdays and baby showers, and they do great work, but it is different. It's not the same thing, right? You're an event professional in the corporate space, blah, blah, blah. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get the client to want to go with us, right? We're trying to stand out here. We're trying to be different. I'm not like, yeah, sure, may the best person win, because I know if it comes down to like a price competition, I'm going to lose because I'm not running a business under the table out of a garage with no team members. We have 13 years of training. We have insurance and we have overhead and stuff like that, right? And that overhead allows us to give our clients a better experience. But if the client just wants the best deal, I know that we're not going to be the one for them, right? So we really want to dominate our niche where we can be the big fish in a small pond and where we can kind of own the market. But also, if you know what other companies are serving a similar client to you, or maybe they're not directly competing with you in your niche, but they have kind of an adjacent niche, then you can actually create really cool and powerful partnerships that can work to grow both businesses. So for example, caterers and Balloon Artisan, they might be serving the same customer, right? But they're obviously not worried about decorating with balloons, and we're not serving food. So we can go to a caterer and say, hey, let's create a partnership. Any client that works with you, we're going to give them 2 free balloon columns. right? Just for working with you, they don't have to buy anything else. They get 2 free balloon columns. Now, the caterer looks good in front of the client, and the client's like, wow, this caterer is really hooking me up. And then hopefully we're benefiting from the caterer's connections and their marketing and all that good stuff to grow the Balloon Artisan brand. In a way, we create kind of a symbiotic relationship, right? And we could do the same thing with lighting companies. Like, hey, if we build this balloon installation, we'll hire you to come light it. Or if somebody wants balloons, send them our way. Whatever it is. It's really helpful to understand who's kind of adjacent to your niche so you can team up with them. But once again, you want to pick your client, the one person, the one customer segment you want to really work with. You want to find their pain point that they are struggling with, that you don't feel is being served very well by the existing players in the market, and you want to double down on that niche. You want to really own everything about that. You want to understand your customer, what their pains are related to that pain point, and how to solve it. So once again, you can stand out apart from your competition. Now let's move on to the third thing that you need to do if you want to stand out in a sea of competition, and that is to understand your market position and to double down on that market positioning. Let me show you a tool that I love to use to understand this principle. So right here we have what I call the value triangle. Now there's 3 points on the value triangle. You have fastest, best, and cheapest. Now it's important to understand that no business can be all 3 of these. So you shouldn't even try it. And if you think you are all 3, if you think you're the fastest, the best, and the cheapest, you're delusional. You were wrong. Now, at most, you can have 2 of these. So you can be the fastest and the best and the cheapest, the fastest and the cheapest, but you can't be all 3. You only need 1. Okay, so you can build a good business being just one of any of these. If you have none of these, that's when you're in a situation where you're going to be constantly bombarded with competing bids, and you're going to struggle to close customers, and your marketing's not going to resonate with them. It's always going to be a haggle, and people are going to be negotiating with you all the time. It's not fun. You're going to struggle to make the money you want as a business owner. You're going to struggle to hire and train your team. Your team's not going to understand how to sell for you because you don't have a good market positioning. So you can't have 0. That's a bad. You can have 1. 2 is great. So to illustrate this concept a little bit better, let's talk about something we all know and love, food. All right, so we have a lot of people that are trying to fill our stomachs up, a lot of businesses. Take, for example, McDonald's. You'll never see a McDonald's commercial that's like, oh, the best burger you've ever had, the best service, the best experience, perfect for date nights. Just doesn't exist. McDonald's is like, we're the fastest and the cheapest. If you pull your car up, 60 seconds later, it'll be cramming a cheeseburger in your face. Like, that's what McDonald's positions himself as. Now, they're selling beef, right? Another business that also sells beef and also sells food could be like Texas Roadhouse. Now, Texas Roadhouse is not trying to be the fastest and the cheapest. They're probably like the fastest and the best. There are restaurants that are similar, like Sizzler, for example, comes to mind, is cheaper than Texas Roadhouse. But, I think Texas Roadhouse tastes better personally. And Texas Roadhouse is moderately fast. There's been times where I've gone in there and from the time I sit down to the time I'm out, it's like 45 minutes, right? So it's obviously not as fast and convenient as McDonald's, but it's still pretty fast and the food's pretty good. Now, Texas Roadhouse might be selling a piece of beef for like $20. One interesting thing to realize, though, is that Texas Roadhouse and McDonald's, even though they're both focused on the business of filling up stomachs and keeping people from being hungry, they are not competing for the same customer. And it's okay for the same person to eat at both restaurants, but it almost would never happen where it's like, should we go out on a date to McDonald's tonight or Texas Roadhouse, right? Texas Roadhouse is the date night one. And likewise, no one's ever been on the way to work like, wow, I'm hungry. I want to stop real quick at Texas Roadhouse before my meeting and grab a steak. Like, it just never happens. And so they each occupy different places on this value triangle, and they each have different niches and they serve a different customer type. Okay, now let's take, for example, a Michelin 3-star restaurant. So that's like the bougie restaurant, the super fancy restaurant. Those restaurants are expensive as hell, right? You can go and spend $200 on a steak at one of those restaurants, and it's going to be the most beautiful steak. It will probably taste way better than anything you could find at Texas Roadhouse, and McDonald's isn't even a competition, so we won't even go there. And the entire restaurant is going to be an experience. But there's nothing cheap about it. It's going to be really expensive. There's nothing fast about it. When you go to a restaurant like this, you're at a minimum there for 2 hours, probably 3 to 4 hours. And a lot of times when people are going to these restaurants, they're trying to make some sort of life experience out of it, right? They traveled across the country. They want to go, to this famous restaurant that they saw on social media or whatever, or they're celebrating a milestone birthday or an anniversary. And usually, once again, nobody's like, should I go to this Michelin star restaurant or Texas Roadhouse or McDonald's? So there's a different spot in the market that each of these fulfills. Now you can build an amazing business in all of these places. Ironically, the one that does the fastest and cheapest, McDonald's, is worth way more than the others. It's worth way more than all the Michelin star restaurants in the world combined, right? So it's not bad to be the fastest and cheapest. You just have to make sure that you keep everything focused on being the fastest and cheapest and not the best. And this same thing happens in the event space. So in 2020, when all the events shut down and my life basically was ending, it was very sad, I was like, okay, I got to keep my team afloat somehow. I got to keep people employed. What am I going to do to keep this business up? And so I pivoted my business and I came up with this concept called Quick Balloon. Now the premise of Quick Balloon, it was a same day or next day or whatever balloon delivery service for birthdays and anniversaries and get well soon. It was kind of cool. And so what happened is we had an e-commerce site. You'd hop on, there'd be like 30 designs. You'd get on, you couldn't customize colors or anything. It's like, this is what we can make you. You can pick your number. So if it's like a 16th birthday or a 50th, like we can swap that out, but everything else is the same. And then we had like some chocolate you could add on or like a bath bomb and maybe a few other things like board games or something. And then one of our team members would go and we'd deliver that. And it was actually kind of fun. We did a singing telegram delivery with it, which was kind of our unique value proposition, how we were trying to stand out. Now there were balloon artists that were way better at creating pretty stuff than what we were, right? Quick Balloon was just very cheap. Like you didn't talk to anybody. You got onto a website, you put in your credit card, paid $60, and then your friend got, someone in a tuxedo singing to them with balloons like 2 hours later. It was really cool. But we weren't trying to be the best. We were just trying to be the fastest and mostly the fastest. I mean, there are cheaper options like a party supply store, but like we were about the same price as flowers, and it was definitely cheaper than going to a party supply store yourself and like having to take the time to deliver it. Everything. But this is kind of where our competitive position was. Now let's compare that to Balloon Artisan. Balloon Artisan is not trying to be the fastest and the cheapest. We are trying to be the best. Now we are pretty fast at what we do in terms of like planning and everything streamlined, and our invoicing process is really smooth. But this is not like our strongest value proposition. We're more focused on getting the vision perfect, aligning our goals with the client's goals and their vision for the event, and making sure that everything is awesome and that it's not going to be a boring or forgettable event. That's what we really do. So every decision that we make in the business, we use that as a filter. Will this help us be even better? And if it will, then we say, okay, let's do it. If it's going to help us, save our clients money and be cheaper, now we're not like ripping clients off by any means, but also, yeah, like we have a whole team that's going to work on the event versus, so-and-so down the street that might be doing it by themselves in the garage, under the table, taking cash. Like we're not doing any of that stuff. So we're not going to compete there. There's so many people that will beat us on price. We just have to stay focused on the quality. If you really want to stand out as an event professional, you cannot be all things to all people. You have to pick your client. You need to understand what their pains are, what keeps them awake at night, what are they worried about with their event, what problem can you solve for them. Then you got to carve out your niche, and you need to figure out what you can do better than anybody else and get laser focused on that niche. Pour everything you've got into solving that one problem. Because if you're competing against someone that's diluted and they're doing a gajillion things and you're doing this one thing, you're going to be better every single time. They won't be able to compete. And so if the client has this problem and they really want this problem solved, you're like, listen, I am your person. You will not find someone that can do this job better for you. I promise. I back it with, my money, my words, my price, whatever, guarantee. Lastly, you need to know your market position, what makes you special, where is the value in working with you going to be. The TLDR, you've really mastered these three concepts right here when you can meet a random stranger that's never spoken with you before, has no clue what you do, and in 30 seconds or less, explain to them what you do and have them come away with three things. One, what type of person would want to work with you, what you do for that person, and what makes you different from everybody else. In the context of Balloon Artisan, when I started the company 13 years ago, I used to tell people, hey, I'm a balloon artist. And they're like, awesome, I love hot air balloons. I'm like, no, not quite. They're like, you paint hot air balloons. I'm like, no. Like, I make balloon arches, okay? And it was funny because we used to get like 3 to 4 inquiries per week about doing hot air balloon stuff. And I'm just like, no, guys. It was very frustrating. Then I got a little bit smarter and a little more experienced, and I'm like, okay, I need to change how I'm explaining my brand and my identity as an event professional. So I said, I make really cool balloon arches for parties. And that was kind of my elevator pitch, so to speak. And nobody's asking me about hot air balloons anymore. People figured that out, There's a lot more clarity around my messaging and who I was and what I could do for people. but it wasn't good enough. Because this whole thing, it's kind of like an awkward dance. Like you're going to get to a point and then you're like, yes, I finally nailed it. And then you're going to get better. And then time's going to pass. And you're like, I didn't know what I was doing there. Like this is the nailing it. And then you're going to get better and time will go on. And as you improve, and you're going like, oh my gosh, it's still not good enough. And then you keep refining it, right? More or less what I tell people now is I build amazing balloon arches for corporate events and like conventions and grand openings. And sometimes we do stuff for private events too, like birthdays or baby showers or graduation. And we do a really good job working with clients who want to make sure that their event is not boring or forgettable. I mean, I'm talking clients that cannot afford for their event to go wrong. Those are the people that really love to work with me. Can you see how things have gotten a little more clear? It's not too lengthy, definitely under 30 seconds, but people can now understand who I am, what sets me apart, who I work with, what I do, all that good stuff, just from that short little elevator pitch. The fun thing is there's actually an economic difference behind each of these statements. So when I used to say, I'm a balloon artist, I was making $25,000 or less per year. And then, I got smarter, got better, figured out my messaging was a little more clear. I wasn't actually a better balloon artist, so that was the crazy thing. I just got clearer on my messaging. And I went from making under $25,000 a year to bringing in about $200,000 a year in revenue, and then personally pocketing about $100,000 to $120,000 of that. So that was a big jump for me, and that completely changed my life. Now, the really cool thing, though, is from saying, I make really cool balloon arches for parties, to my more updated one, is we were able to go from about $200,000 in revenue to now, last year we did $1.6 million. So it was basically an 8x jump, and a lot of that jump just had to do with clarifying our messaging, understanding who we work with and who we don't work with. Where's our niche? Where can we shine that nobody else can shine? When we figure that out, the money followed. If you want to stop blending in and you're ready to stand out in a crowded sea of competition as an event professional, these are the 3 strategies that will get you there. Now, if you have any questions about any of the things that we covered today in the episode, feel free to look me up on LinkedIn. My name's Keenan Price. I'm the CEO of Balloon Artisan and the host of the Event Secrets podcast. Find me there, send me a connection request, shoot me a message. I love connecting with other entrepreneurs and event professionals. Go ahead, let me know, what questions you have or how I can better help you. And if you have a really good question, I would love to include that in a future episode of the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today on this episode of the Event Secrets podcast, where we talk about how to put on better events, take better care of our clients, and make a whole lot more money in the process. I have a huge favor to ask of you. If you know anybody that would love to learn about the things we talked about in the podcast today, maybe they're an event professional or a business owner, please feel free to share it with them. It would mean the world to me. And not only that, but when you share the podcast, I'm able to see which episodes get shared, and I take that as a signal of, hey, this is good, keep making more content like this. And the ones that don't get shared, I'm like, probably don't try that one again. So if you loved this today and you want more of it, let me know by sharing the podcast with a friend.